We know that burn pit smoke is not good for anybody. You and I wouldn't want to breathe that. It's an offensive kind of odor. It's not ideal, but given the situation back in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, when we were moving into theater, our engineers had really no other recourse to dispose of waste. And we know early on a variety of things that were burned in those burn pits probably shouldn't have been. And as time went on, regulations were put into place to ensure that what was burnt was appropriate and that we moved towards incinerators as we could. So with that background, we engaged in 2010 in some fairly extensive epidemiologic studies that compared individuals that were assigned to camps with burn pits versus those that were assigned to camps without burn pits. And we reaccomplished that study again in 2012 just to make sure that, with a longer period of follow-up, we were going to be able to identify whether there was anything significant related to burn pit exposures. And basically, those studies, which were very in-depth, did not identify an increased risk of respiratory symptoms or disease at locations with burn pits as opposed to no burn pits. We know, however, that on an individual basis that it would be plausible for a specific individual maybe to acquire some kind of condition related to burn pit smoke, depending on how close they were to the burn pit, how much smoke they breathed, individual susceptibilities, and even exposure to other airborne particulates. And based on all of that, we feel that if there are people who have been harmed by burn pit emissions, the numbers are fairly low. But again, we believe it could be plausible that there are some people that may be affected.
So let me ask you about a number of people have told me that, yes, burn pits might have been necessary at the beginning of the war in Iraq, but these burn pits were used for many, 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 many years. Balad, for example, which was the biggest burn pit, according to what I've read, what I've been told, that was a very established main operating base. It had fast food restaurants. It was there for a long, long time. It wasn't this little outpost, yet burn pits continued for years and years and years. What's your response to that?
Well, there are some that did. I visited Balad. That was one of the locations that I went, and I saw the burn pits firsthand. I also saw in 2008 3 very, very large commercial incinerators, industrial-sized incinerators that had been installed as well. And the burn pit actually, I think,
were they being
closed.
Used?
They were being used, and the burn pit use was being decreased over time. But it did take some time to purchase incinerators and install them. That doesn't happen overnight. These are huge things, bigger than locomotives, that require a lot of planning, requires the funding, and then requires the installation.
I've interviewed doctors who tell me the particulate matter is bad if you're burning batteries, if you're burning plastics, styrofoams. Those are going to give off toxic fumes. They say that's sort of common knowledge among professional medical people. Was your department sounding the alarm on this?
So we were not aware. The medical department, at least at our level, was not aware that hazardous materials were being burned in those burn pits early on. That was not common knowledge to us. We heard this after the fact. And clearly those things shouldn't be burned. But on the other hand, people need to understand that it's truly the dose that makes the poison. So low-level exposures of some of that material probably did not create a measurable risk in people. If there were individuals, however, that were working right there at the burn pit that were inhaling a lot of this day after day after day, then there certainly is a plausibility that those people could be harmed. But when conditions would change, the same materials were not burned every day. There was a great variance into what went into those burn pits. So, I mean, you wouldn't expect to have batteries burned every single day in a burn pit. So these were periodic episodes, and I think that's probably good because clearly there was hazardous materials burned, but we have no evidence they were, a certain one was burned regularly within a pit.
Another thing I hear from talking to folks is that the veterans feel like this is sort of a replay of Agent Orange, different scene, different situation, but where members of the veteran, the soldiers were exposed to toxins due to our own doing. What's your response to that?
I can certainly see why they might equate the two. Herbicide orange had one particular chemical in it that we know was a bad actor, and that was dioxin. Okay. Burn pit smoke, it has hundreds of constituents in it, and it's highly dependent on what is being burned and the temperature it's being burned at. There's not a bad actor or even a set of bad actors that we know were at levels that would have caused adverse outcomes. Again, we've studied it. We've taken hundreds, if not thousands, of air samples and analyzed them. We know that up close to the burn pit, some of these levels were fairly high, but we also know that there weren't a lot of people in that close proximity. The individuals that worked around the burn pits are probably most at risk, and perhaps some of the health conditions that are being seen today and will come to light as we look at the individuals who have registered under the VA's Airborne Hazard and Open Burn Pit Registry. Maybe some of that will be teased out, but at this point in time, we just don't have the information to be able to really discern that.